Hey all, I'm Kara Perez, founder of Bravely Go, and I don't know about y'all. No, you know what? Wait, I do know about y'all. I bet y'all's grocery budget has gone through the roof because mine has. I say this as a grocery store ninja. I used to be able to get in and out of the grocery store with only spending $50 to feed two people, me and T-Bone, for the week. And let me tell you, that is not the case anymore. Groceries have gotten so expensive. Now, there are some basic yet deeply effective shopping and cooking habits that can save us money at the grocery store, and that's what I'm going to dive into today. Jury is still out on whether or not we're actually in a recession, and you're going to get different answers depending on who you ask, but I'm not here to declare we're in a recession or not. I'm here to help us save money at the grocery store. Speaking of, comment below with the food that you're seeing some of the biggest price increases on, because I'm really interested to know what we're all dealing with out there. So how can we get back to those, halcyon days of cheaper groceries? Well, the first thing is we need these stores to stop price gouging us. But the second thing are these 6 tips. First, use apps to lower your food cost. The 2 apps that I really like are the Too Good To Go app and the Fetch app. So Too Good To Go is amazing, and it really speaks to my trash panda heart. Basically, Too Good To Go is an app that different restaurants and stores can sign up for to sell you food that they have left over at the end of the day for a significantly discounted price. Now, the thing is that it's kind of a grab bag. You don't know what you're going to get, but you know it's going to be cheap as hell. And one of my absolute favorite restaurants, I'm not really sure if it's a restaurant. I don't know if we can categorize it as a restaurant, but Tiff's Treats participates in a lot of cities with Too Good To Go. And that means you're going to get really delicious cookies for literally half the price. It's a fantastic idea if you're having people over and you want a cute little dessert, but you don't want to break your budget. The Fetch app is also a really good app. So basically, you go to the grocery store, you buy your stuff, and then you're going to scan your app and submit it to Fetch. Fetch is then going to give you points, and you turn these points into gift cards. So yes, there's an upfront cost with Fetch. You got to pay that bill first, but down the line, it saves you big money. Number 2 is to shop flyer sales and focus on getting the most out of each item. Not to sound like a grandma transported from the 1800s, but really, we are all throwing away a lot of perfectly edible things simply because we're not used to eating them. Let's take the squash, for example. A lot of us eat squash, right? But I'm willing to bet very few of us are eating the seeds that we're scraping out of a squash, even though the seeds are totally edible. And if you toast them up and sprinkle a little seasoning on them, they're a very delicious snack. So let's start thinking about how we can get more out of what we're already buying. To continue using my squash example, once you've eaten everything you can out of the squash, don't just toss it in the trash. You can actually compost it, stick it in the backyard, or contribute to your city's compost, and use that to turn it into more food down the line. And obviously, the advice to shop flyer sales kind of speaks for itself, but every grocery store has a flyer or an app now, because we're living in the digital age, which will show you the weekly items that are on sale. Shopping those items instead of sticking to a preordained list in your mind is a really good way to cut down on how much you spend at the grocery store. Number 3, put some respect on beans and lentils. I am sick of the bean slander. I'm sick of it. Beans and lentils are delicious, but here in the United States, they have this really crappy image of being like poor people food, and I'm not going to get into the weird dynamics of the phrase poor people today. That's another video. But this idea, people often talk about rice and beans as if you don't want to eat anything delicious, you'll just be sitting at home eating rice and beans. And I'm like, sir, rice and beans are delicious. What are you talking about? Beans and lentils are incredible sources of protein. They're really, really cheap, and depending on how you cook them, they are really delicious. I think there's a lot of classism and more than a pinch of racism in the way that we talk about beans in the United States, and I'm sick of it. I spent a good amount of time last year in South America, and you know what was in every single restaurant? Rice and beans. And you know what was delicious every time I ate it? Rice and beans. Now look, if you're just opening a can of beans and nuking them in the microwave and then dumping them on a tortilla with some cheese, yeah, that's not going to be super delicious. You have to take a little bit of time and properly cook and season your beans. Move beyond just salt and pepper, people, because there's a lot of delicious flavors out there. And the great thing is that To cook beans, it's really easy. You can do it in a slow cooker when you're at work. You don't have to be slaving over a stove, I promise. And the same is true for lentils. Lentils come in a variety of flavors, and they can be cooked in a variety of ways and with a variety of flavors. Say variety one more time, Kara. I mean, look at these lentils I had in Colombia. Number 4, stretch your most expensive items. I don't buy meat to eat at home, but I know a lot of people do, and I know meat is a very expensive item. So try and get more bang out of your buck by stretching your meat. And you know where this leads me? Right on back to lentils, baby. You can use lentils as a meat substitute or as a way to stretch your meat. So for example, if you're making a chili and you want to put ground beef in it, you can have the ground beef that the recipe calls for, stick the remainder of the beef in the fridge, save it for another recipe, and instead replace that with lentils. This is going to give you more meat overall, right? You're stretching that. It's also going to keep your protein for that chili recipe really high because lentils are what? Chock full of protein. I feel like I'm like, and this video brought to you by beans and lentils. Sponsored by lentils. This kind of supplementing will really help you save money at the grocery store. Number 5 is to buy things you actually eat and use. Y'all, I need us to be honest about the bagged salads. Or maybe it's the grapes or the eggplant, but you know what I'm talking about. The thing that you buy because you think you should eat it, but you end up throwing it out every single week. Aspirational shopping is a huge problem when it comes to food waste and when it comes to wasting your very hard-earned dollars. Just personally, I know there's a lot of foods out there that are maybe having a trendy moment or that are good for me, but I am not going to eat it. Brussels sprouts and collard greens, I'm sorry, they're not very delicious. I don't like them. I'm definitely never going to cook them by myself at home in a way that they would need to be tasty to me. So why bother buying them? Just because I saw some lady on Instagram make a really cool looking glazed Brussels sprout dish, I'm not that lady. I don't have that skill set. I'm not going to waste my money by buying Brussels sprouts. Being honest with ourselves about what we will and will not eat is a huge opportunity to save money at the grocery store. You don't need to be wasting $6 a pop on those bagged salads if they're just going to end up in the trash every single Sunday. And number 6 is to DIY. Okay, this tip is not for my chronically ill girlies or my single parents or my booked and busy people. This is for people like me who have the time and energy to be doing a lot of meal prep and DIY cooking at home. Pre-made or pre-packaged food like those already peeled and cut squashes or the already made guacamole, those things are always more expensive than buying the respective, unprepared counterparts and making it at home. You're paying for the convenience of not having to peel and slice your own squash. Now, if you need to buy the pre-prepared stuff, great, go for it. I'm not here to judge. But if you're looking to save money, this is an area to do it in. You can save money by buying your own squash, by buying your own avocados and turning it into guacamole. You can even supercharge your savings by doing this by buying these separate ingredients in bulk and then meal prepping big meals and then freezing the food. So for example, T-Bone and I are huge fans of this butternut squash soup, which we eat a lot in the spring, summer, and fall. And I often buy a couple of butternut squashes, a couple of all the ingredients, make a huge batch of it, and then stick half of it in the freezer. So I can come back to it a couple weeks later and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this free food here. Now I don't have to go grocery shopping this week. This saves money because if the price of butternut squash goes up in the ensuing weeks since I made it, that doesn't impact me because I got my butternut squash back in the day when it was still cheap. Let me know in the comments if you have other money-saving tips. Truly, this is leave a tip to save a life, y'all, because we are out here fighting for our lives at these grocery stores. And as always, if you liked this video, please, please, please give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe. It really goes a long way for helping a really small channel like ours. And I will see you next week.